So in this video we are going to be taking a look at a scenario where the South American bloc from WICSO comes to the real world. So the South American bloc is one of the major alliances in WICSO. They basically have full dominance over an entire continent, so it'll be very interesting to see what they do here. If you do end up enjoying this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. So before we discuss what these guys are actually going to be doing, there is one thing I need to talk about that is probably going to change a lot of things in this video. And that is the fact that these guys, well, they're fascist countries. These guys are fascist nations, so that'll definitely hurt relations with most countries in the world. Big democracies like the USA and a lot of European nations, they immediately have a lot of disdain for these guys. Also, just a thing to note, all alliances have been disabled, so no NATO, no CSTO, no Rio Pact. That will make this scenario a lot more interesting, so every country is basically on their own. But anyway, let's get to the events of this video. So the very first thing that is going to be happening is these guys are going to be just cleaning up some countries around them that have been destroyed by these guys coming into the real world. First of all, Brazil takes over the remainder of Colombia as they had just collapsed, as well as the remainder of these few countries down here. These two will be going over, I believe this is Paraguay and Argentina, and then the rest of Brazil will be going over to Blue Brazil. Now, I think Argentina and Chile would survive. They have basically just been reduced down to Patagonia. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and see what these guys plan to do. So the first thing that will be happening is Brazil is going to be invading another country, and that is actually going to be Panama. So seeing that here Panama is kind of open, they don't want to risk, like in WICSO, how they had to fight to keep this secure. They will be going ahead and invading it. So the Brazilian forces will be quickly crossing into the country and seizing the Panama Canal. Then they will be slowly moving down, as well as making a naval landing here to encircle a lot of Panamese forces. Is that how you say people from Panama? I don't think it's Panamanese. I think it's Panamese. But either way, these guys will fall over, and let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty, which is unsurprisingly going to go and be full annexation. So in this peace treaty here, Panama is fully annexed. After this, Brazil is going to do a few naval operations into the Caribbean. They decide to take over Jamaica to spread their influence up here. They also take over a few of these islands. Now, the USA, they absolutely despise what's going on. They don't like the fact that their influence is being threatened here. You know, you can't dominate over these smaller countries, it has to be us, because, yes. So, the Americans will be going over to Brazil and saying, if you invade a single other North American country, we will be declaring war on you. Brazil, understanding the threat of the USA, even in WICSO, the American country which is weaker than the USA, is stronger than them, so they do not want to risk it against the USA. So they will be, I guess understanding that, and they will not be going over into North America. But no one said we couldn't go into South America. In a combined effort, both Uruguay and Chile start an invasion into Argentina and real Chile. They quickly cross in, and there is really nothing to defend these guys. They are extremely weak. They're already not the strongest of countries in the real world, but with them losing a large portion of their northern lands, they are going to be even weaker. So within a matter of a few months, these guys are going to be falling. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So in this peace treaty here, we can see that the rest of South America has been split. Now, this does make Uruguay look extremely weird, so I am going to go ahead and release a weird merging country between Argentina and Chile, just so they don't look atrocious. But I forgot to get rid of this line. The Uruguayans do go ahead and take the Falkland Islands, very strategic. That's part of the UK. Never mind, they don't take the Falkland Islands. I forgot that wasn't part of Argentina. Never mind then. But they do go ahead and take a big portion of land. And you know what, I'm actually going to say they establish a new country down here, which is a puppet state to them. Because I don't think it would make sense for them to just leave this land. And with that taking place, the South American bloc officially has full control of South America. So, yeah, very strong alliance right here. But these guys are not going to be content of just having that. And just a few months after this war down here, Brazilian ships are going to be spotted crossing the Atlantic Ocean to Africa. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, Brazilian forces cross into Nigeria. Multiple landings are made, the capital of Nigeria is also quickly taken, and the full coastal land falls over to them. The Brazilians are quite clearly here trying to get a sort of colonial empire, and they're very much looking to spread their influence into Africa, which is full of weaker countries that they can probably take over. So the Brazilians are going to be continuing to move on in, and after losing all of their valuable lands in the south, the Nigerians are going to go ahead and surrender. And let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty, full annexation. The Brazilians, they fully take it over. They then send an ultimatum over to Cameroon saying, join our colony or we'll invade you and force you to join our colony. And not wanting the people to die, the Cameroonians will accept this ultimatum. I don't know how to pronounce groups of people from countries today, it looks like. But that's very noble of them. Unfortunately, they do have to live under a fascist dictatorship now, so that's not great. But then something else is going to be taking place, and this is actually going to be an event that does have a lot of backlash. After having pretty good success in Nigeria, the Brazilians are then going to be going after South Africa. Multiple Brazilian landings take place on the South African coast, even capturing Cape Town, which is, I believe, the main capital of South Africa. South Africa has like 3 capitals. And more landings will be made over here, even one meeting up to cut the country in two. Well, not really, but separating a lot of front lines. It's making South Africa a lot harder to fight. Or it's making it so it's harder for them to fight. I'm slurring my words. Sorry about that. But the Brazilians are going to be breezing through, and it's here where the backlash that I was talking about is going to take place. The USA and a few other countries, which I will colour in a second, will be declaring war on Brazil in name of stopping this imperialist expansion. Other countries that join in on this are Chad, because they're an absolute Chad, this guy, which is Guinea, and Benin. I think that's Benin. Togo and Benin. They look very similar, but I'm pretty sure this is Benin. So these are the countries that are going to be standing up to Brazil and the South American bloc. Let's go ahead and take a look at this African region first. So while these guys do quickly get invaded, because Brazil did actually have a lot of forces on the border because they were planning to invade these countries, something they did know about, Chad will be able to invade in using a special tactic of Toyotas and machine guns, and they managed to take a very nice portion of this Nigerian land, which isn't very well defended by the Brazilians. They then garrison this area pretty well and wait for the Americans to help them out. Back down here in South Africa, the Brazilians continue to storm through. However, with America now in the war, they will be kind of slowing down on this advance and hoping to kind of just get rid of these guys and fight America, but not just leaving all the troops here so America has an easy time invading them. It's kind of a lose-lose situation here. But the Brazilians do still see some slow progress. Over to the Caribbean, the Americans make a landing and fully take over Jamaica, and then in an island-hopping campaign, they take over these Brazilian islands, and then begin to bombard Trinidad and the whole Brazilian coast. The Americans will then make a landing in Panama and begin to move down the canal, until they reach the Darien Gap over here, which I think I made Brazil invade through earlier, my bad. I already know someone crashed out at me for that in the comments. But the Americans will not be able to move out of this area, so they will be forced to do this by other means, including a naval landing. Yeah, the Brazilians, they already struggled in WICSO against the American country's navy, but this is the USA's navy, which is probably 3 times stronger. The USA will have a very easy time making multiple landings on the coast of Brazil. However, the USA isn't only fighting Brazil, they're fighting an entire continent. So reinforcements from Peru, Chile, Uruguay, and this weird Patagonian puppet will move up and heavily slow down this American advance. However, they do still manage to gain all of this land here, as well as Trinidad, and this actually allows a landing on the mainland, just like this. Back over to South Africa, after continuously and slowly being pushed back, these guys will eventually surrender over to Brazil, and these forces then move away in two paths. One group goes up here to deal with Chad, and another group goes over here to deal with the USA. These forces that arrive in attempt to go to war with Chad. However, Chad has some superior guerrilla tactics for the desert, so they do kind of struggle. Now, this isn't the Sahara, it is the Sahel, so it's not as bad as the Sahara, but still, like I just said, very deserty. Back over here, however, the Americans are starting to see a lot of resistance. They attempt to connect up these two front lines, and they do for a short while, however they do get pushed back. That is kind of the only place where they're seeing this much resistance though. Over here they are able to see a lot of success. They make a landing in Ecuador. They also make one in Peru using forces that were stationed in Panama. Not Peru, am I stupid? This is Colombia. But either way, these two landings over here connect up, and the Darien Gap is kind of just besieged with guerrilla warfare. And through a very large war of attrition, these guys are basically just forced to lay down their arms. Over in Chad, it's going much better. The Brazilians realise that Toyotas are the key to success, so they are able to push back Chad and kind of just force them to leave the war. And now it's just them versus the USA, who is like really strong, obviously. These guys probably weren't needed to help the USA. The USA probably could have done this on its own. The Americans are going to continue to see success into Brazil as they're kind of... they're slowing down as more reinforcements arrive, but they are still seeing immense success. However, it gets to the point where with Brazilian reinforcements coming in and more troops coming from the rest of South America, the war just becomes completely deadlocked. No fronts move except for this front over here being connected up, but all that does is make it so the Americans have to have an even more spread out front. The Americans are fighting on an extremely long front line, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, so they're really not able to see success. They attempt to make a landing near the capital of Brazil, however this land is extremely valued to the Brazilians, so they are pushed off. And after staying like this for multiple months, even getting towards a year, the Americans and the Brazilians will be agreeing to a white peace, where the Brazilians are going to be punished, however, because the Americans didn't achieve total victory, they won't be able to fully dictate what happens to Brazil. So, enough yap, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. Firstly, the Brazilian-Nigerian colony expands to take over the two countries that join them in the war. Over in South Africa, a few strategic areas will be taken, and this also weakens them a lot. Now, the peace treaty in the Americas is much more interesting, because while the US claimed to be joining this war to free countries that Brazil had invaded, they do absolutely none of that. Instead of freeing nations, they just take over Brazilian land. They take over Jamaica, they take over these islands and Trinidad, as well as Panama. This is now US territory, Galapagos Islands, and this small portion. So the US is kind of just using this as an excuse to go and take land. Honestly though, nothing wrong with that. I would much rather have the USA have this land than dirty fascists, so it's probably a good thing. So with Brazil kind of being firmly kicked out of the Americas now, their influence has been reduced over here, they will be kind of just calming down for a while. And to be honest, I don't really see Brazil doing much else. They've basically just done what they want to do, expanded their claims and spread their influence. So that is where I'm actually going to be leaving this video off. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Also, tell me in the comments below what WICSO countries / group of countries you want to see come to the real world next.